Silent sirens in Maui. Silent sirens in Colorado during the Marshall Fire. We look at the limits of Colorado's warning systems, like talking sirens. Are those the answer? Or might they just pull people toward the danger? Boulder voters said no to more unrelated people living in the same house. So City Council did it anyway. Asylum seekers waiting on their claims can't provide for their families.
We won't let these people work.
We go along as they look for work anyway, knowing that they might get taken advantage of. And the 343rd edition of your Friday Good News takes us to talk with some very winded college students stuck between rocks at a beautiful place. Tonight on Next. The sirens didn't sound during the fire on Maui. Sirens didn't sound during the Marshall Fire here. Boulder County leaders told us it's because those sirens weren't programmed for wildfires. Tonight, our Steve Staker starts us off with a look at our capabilities in Colorado, including talking sirens.
As Maui begins the long road to recovery, questions burn as hot as the fire that destroyed a historic town and killed more than 100 people so far. Residents there want to know why Maui didn't blow sirens to warn people to get out. The reason given, those sirens tell people to seek higher ground in a tsunami, which would have moved people toward the flames.
It affects all of the other thinking about other systems across the U.S.
Similar questions lingered after the Marshall Fire in Boulder County. Boulder has sirens that will actually talk to you and communicate what the threat is. But the sirens in Superior and Louisville weren't programmed to communicate wildfire at the time, so they weren't used. Boulder's emergency manager told me today those sirens are reprogrammed now.
A person can be trained to respond to a tone because that tone represents a signal that tells them a specific action to take.
Jeanette Sutton is a social scientist who studies alerts and warnings at the University of Albany. She says sirens without that messaging really can only be used for a single purpose. Around here, they're mostly for tornadoes. They tell you to head to the basement.
When there's an expectation that a tone represents multiple actions, then you have a problem, because a warning is supposed to tell people what the hazard is, in addition to what they're supposed to do to protect themselves.
We asked around today and found out that Lakewood, Morrison, and Wheat Ridge also have sirens that can talk. Denver doesn't. Aurora has the capability, but it doesn't use it anymore, and there's a good reason.
If I had to guess, probably 20 years ago, they stopped doing that, and that was based on some observation of, since they are predominantly associated with tornadoes, they observed folks would come out of shelter, come out of their homes to hear what the siren was saying.
Don't want to do that during a tornado. On Aurora's website, it says, if you hear the siren, you should head inside and then try to seek information about what's happening. So they're likely not going to use it if they don't want you to stay in your house. The key here is you shouldn't rely solely on one alert to know what's going on. So I will say it again, like I've said it so many times. Sign up for your area's emergency alerts and make sure that the emergency alerting capabilities on your phone is turned on, and be alert when you hear a siren to try to figure out what's going on in that situation. You know, get yourself to safety, but then try to figure out what's going on.
I never, for the life of me, Steve, thought about the idea that if sirens talk to people, that folks might stay outside or go outside to hear them and be in more danger.
You got to keep in mind that sirens are meant to alert people who are outside. They are not supposed to penetrate walls. And so if you have that extra sound, somebody might say like, ooh, that might be some important information I need to hear, and they might try to head outside. Though in certain situations, like if it's a wildfire, they want you to be outside so that you can get moving away from your home in a case like that. But it's just really one of those things where you have to just be alert in these situations and look for as much information as you possibly can.
From those multiple sources, you always say, like build that toolkit of multiple sources that are going to alert you in an emergency. Yep. Steve, thank you. Finding a place to live in Boulder is getting slightly more laid back. After years of battles, the city is going to allow more unrelated people to live together under the same roof. Advocates say it's one way to deal with an affordable housing crunch. Boulder City Council has voted to allow up to 5 non-related people to live together in most parts of the city. Previously, the limit was 3 or 4 unrelated people. This has been a contentious issue in Boulder, especially since 2021. That's when voters rejected a citizen-led initiative to expand the occupancy limit by tying it to the number of bedrooms in a home. The conversation on City Council focused on balancing concerns about parties and noise near CU with the community's obvious need for more affordable housing.
If you just look at how much income it requires to afford to rent in Boulder,
these laws are discriminatory because you cannot afford a single bedroom apartment by yourself. You have to share housing. So it's really discriminatory on a basic class level.
The state legislature rejected the idea of lifting occupancy limits statewide this year. That was part of the governor's failed land use reform bill. So for now, occupancy is up to local governments. 2 years ago, Denver raised its unrelated occupancy limit from 2 to 5. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston says the government really has a choice. Let asylum seekers work while they wait on their case to be decided, or the government can provide for them.
We're doing everything we can to transition people, but the reality is people are going to have to look for work on their own without state support or federal government approval if we want them to support themselves. So our choices are either help them find a way to support themselves or have the state or the city commit to supporting them permanently on our own. We don't have the city budget to do that permanently.
So asylum seekers who want to work are being driven to find work under the table, usually cash-paying, short-term jobs. Our Angeline McCall shows us the challenge that many are facing to get by and provide for their families.
They're here with the same hope.
Trabajo.
Hope
Dale.
that today they'll be chosen.
Es fuerte la vida del inmigrante.
Gavin has been out here since 5 a.m.
Trabajo. Tengo 6 horas aquí, perdida, buscando trabajo, jale. Alguien que no era oportunidad y no consiguió nada.
This routine doesn't offer any stability.
No, no es suficiente así. Claro, es algo porque sí solucionan las cosas, pero no nos alcanza, amigo.
Todo bien.
Some bring skills from home, like Carlos.
Yo trabajo en construcción en Venezuela.
They're forced to take whatever work may come their way.
Me siento alegre porque, bueno, logré mi sueño y estoy acá y yo no puedo bajarle ánimo, pues, porque sé que Dios está conmigo y sé que en cualquier momento voy a estar bien. Worky, worky, worky. Worky, worky, worky.
Carlos takes the pay, whatever hours, when it's offered.
A veces hasta las 2 de la tarde me han sacado a trabajar 5 o 4 horas y toca trabajarlo porque a veces no hay dinero para uno comer y cosas así, ¿me entiendes? Y toca hacerlo, esperar porque...
Jale, jale.
Usually, it's $120 or less for one day's work.
Vive en una carpa así, con otro amigo ahí.
Tonight, he'll head home to a tent and be back tomorrow.
No estamos bien, pero ahí vamos poco a poco. Sé que más adelante un poco Dios nos va a dar la oportunidad de estar un poco mejor.
Uno se cansa, se estresa, te duele la cabeza, se te quitan los ánimos, te dan ganas de llorar. Pero uno hace todo por la familia para salir adelante, amiga.
Worky, tío, worky.
Money they need for themselves.
Aquí te van a llorar, pero para adelante, amiga. Yo quiero ayudar a mi mamá. Tiene lepra, es una roncha que sale por eso, pero para adelante.
Money
Sí.
to help back home with his mom's leprosy.
Jale, jale.
Money they'll only get if they're chosen.
Tener paciencia y confía en Dios, que Dios le mandará bendiciones a uno más adelante, pero ahorita sí está un poquito apretado.
The group we met was about 30 people, but I'm told some days it can be around 60, especially early in the morning. And of course, that's not the only site. But just keep in mind, many of these are very young adult men who come here by themselves alone. Many that I spoke to are only in their early or mid-20s.
So under the asylum rules, they're eventually able to apply for the ability to work. Under the Trump administration, they had proposed pushing that back even longer, making people wait longer. There doesn't seem to be a great groundswell with either the Biden administration or Congress to move up that deadline to allow people to work sooner, even though you have people like Mayor Johnston clamoring for some kind of a solution.
Right. I think what local governments are trying to do really is to find their own way around the federal issue, but it's really unclear if that's even something that they can logically do. And then not only that, right, it's hard enough for you and me to understand these kinds of laws. And then when you try to explain it to someone who's new to the country that might have a language barrier, you know, they're even confused to what they're entitled to. When
Sure.
can I get my work permit? And so when things change too, that's not necessarily always easy to convey to them either.
Yeah, and all of this happening at a time when employers are desperate to find willing workers. Angeline McCall, thank you. The plan to bring crude oil through Colorado by rail is now on hold. A federal appeals court sided with community leaders in Eagle County who said that the environmental regulators look at this did not properly examine the impact on Colorado. This decision overturns federal approval of what's called the Uinta Basin Railway Project. The appeals court ruled that regulators didn't do enough to study how potential derailments, oil spills, or fires could impact the entire Colorado River. Their report had said the downstream communities were too far away from the rail line. It wasn't part of their jurisdiction. On top of what the court called a poor environmental review, the court also said regulators glossed over the railway's uncertain financial picture. So the court sent that railway project back for another environmental impact survey. For decades, a community effort up in northern Colorado has made sure that every kid is able to go off to school with a new backpack if they need it, filled with all the supplies requested by their teacher in school. But increased need in the community and dropping fundraising numbers has left them a bit short this year. So since Wednesday, you have raised more than $25,000 for the School is Cool Backpack Drive, organized by volunteers in the Colorado State University community. Every underserved student in the Boulder School District qualifies for a backpack if they need it. Volunteers are putting together 2,700 of them. More backpacks this year will be going to students in universal pre-K, and other backpacks will be left at homeless shelters for the families that end up there during the school year. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get the link to join me and a bunch of Coloradans in donating to this effort. Your generosity so far has left the organizers, in their words, gobsmacked. Let's keep pouring on the back-to-school love for every kid in northern Colorado.
You want to include people, and you want them to identify with the country. You have to do it in a positive fashion.
Yep. Looks like another super racist place name in Colorado might get replaced. Suncor's Commerce City Refinery gets a slap on the wrist for safety violations. Yet another that's barely going to dent the bottom line. And it is all uphill from here. We end the week the way we always do, with some good news. Next. The EPA says that Suncor's refinery in Commerce City isn't doing enough to prevent toxic chemical releases and isn't sending out alerts quickly enough when those releases happen. So Suncor is going to have to rummage through their couch cushions to come up with some fine money again. The agency says an inspection in 2020 showed that Suncor didn't complete hazard analyses, didn't update their operating procedures to meet safety guidelines. They also claim Suncor took too long to notify regulators about a sulfur dioxide release in 2018. And another hazardous waste release in 2019. Suncor is required to alert authorities within a 15-minute window. This latest fine is going to go toward purchasing emergency response equipment for South Adams County Fire Department. Suncor was fined $300,000, about how much the company makes every 19 minutes. That ought to teach him a lesson, Crispy Donkey. I don't want to bring you in on this Suncor stuff. I'm not going to do that. But that is important news for anybody who, say, breathes air in Colorado, which is also kind of your business. We have got some unusual doings going on off of Baja California that could impact our weather.
Exactly, Kyle. It's going to be an indirect impact, and it's not too often that we're talking about a Category 4 hurricane off the west coast of Mexico, but that's exactly what we've got. Now, exactly where this tracks is going to determine just exactly those indirect impacts to us here in Colorado. But first things first, you've probably heard about this. This is major Category 4 Hurricane Hillary. This is going to track its way into the west coast. As it does so, we've got the first tropical storm watches on record for Southern California. But the issue with this storm, it's going to be 3 to 6 inches worth of rainfall in the desert. This is a real big deal in that part of the country. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to strengthen a ridge of high pressure off to the east, and that means it's going to be extra hot and extra dry for us here in Colorado indirectly because of that hurricane. Now, we do have some showers and some thunderstorms to tell you about. These are mostly east of Denver right now. These are dissipating as we speak. We expect those showers and storms to gradually push their way off to the north and east, and we'll dry things on out. And folks, that hot and dry forecast, it's here to stay with highs near 100 on Monday. And again, that is in part due to Hurricane Hillary.
It all comes to this. You can see beautiful golden. Welcome to Mines. Here it is, starting off.
How about that? School of Mines students have some real stones. Their annual tradition is tonight's good news. Next. Another super racist place name in Colorado is on its way to becoming history with a unanimous vote of the state's Geographic Naming Advisory Board. Probably think that here in the year of our Lord 2023, we don't need to be calling anything Chinaman's Canyon. It's down in Los Animas County. The board is recommending the name Taishan Canyon be a tribute to the province where many Chinese American immigrants came from. A place in Chaffee County had the same derogatory name. It was renamed in 2021. Historian at CU Boulder says this is a move toward inclusivity.
We feel that the name should be changed for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is because it's one, derogatory, and second, it's no way to affirm, if you will, the identity of a group of people who had done so much.
The state board can only recommend name changes. Decision's not final. So next goes to the governor for approval. Then a national board would still have to approve the name change. That can take a while. You might know the proposal to change Mount Evans to Mount Blue Sky got to that national board. It's been held up there since March. You know, it's a rock-solid tradition, not unlike our good news, except their tradition's a lot older than ours. The M climb seemed like a great place to ask people about good news while they were trying to carry a 10-pound rock up Mount Zion in Golden.
I think we're all pretty electric right now. This is it's the beginning of the year.
I think it's a cool tradition that they have.
This is the M climb, so all the organizations and Greek life and everybody on campus, they line up all the way to the the Mines M, and we welcome the freshmen. My good news is being back with all these people, being back with the Mines family.
The gang's all here.
My good news is we furnished our apartment.
My good news is we just got back from ore digger camp and we went sledding on tubes down the side of a hill and it was awesome.
Did you guys go together?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did go together. It was a good bonding experience.
It was.
This is a tradition that Mines has had for a very long time. You bring a 10-pound rock from your home.
My good news is I made it as a college freshman at Colorado School of Mines.
And you're gonna go up to an M that's up there.
Not done yet. No, we're almost there.
You're gonna dip it in whitewash or white paint and leave that rock there on the M. And when it's time to graduate and you leave this school, you're gonna come back up here and take a rock. My good news is I moved out of Texas to be here and that I have my family support.
I'm really proud to be here too, especially being a first generation in my family to go to college.
Welcome to Mines.
My good news is that M Climb's amazing. Go Mines.
Go ore digger.
The gang's all here. M-I-N-E-S. What the hell do we care now?
Love that. Love it, love it, love it. Every single year. You know what I don't love? The fact that your feedback is racist trash tonight, but we'll go through it next. In feedback tonight, Mark writes in to say, your reporter Angeline McCall makes many reports on Next that are basically designed to humanize the migrants who have come here. The problem with the recent mass migration of migrants is that they are not nice, likable people. So, Mark, that vile racist trash aside, they actually don't need humanizing because, again, they are humans. What they could use is for folks to not dehumanize them, to not say things, sweeping generalizations about thousands of men, women, and children that they are not nice, likable people. If you don't like our asylum laws, write to your elected representatives. Don't launch racist attacks on people who are within that system. We'll see you next time.